لا بأس حطها هنا. لا بأس.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله، الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبع هداه. أما بعد، فالرسالة الثانية وهي شروط الصلاة وأركانها وواجباتها، شيخ الإسلام محمد بن عبد الوهاب رحمه الله تعالى. أيضا سنمر عليها ونأخذ بعض المسائل أو نشرح بعض المسائل التي ذكرها رحمه الله تعالى. نسأل الله عز وجل لنا ولكم التيسير. قال: شروط الصلاة 9: الإسلام والعقل والتمييز ورفع الحدث وإزالة النجاسة وستر العورة ودخول الوقت واستقبال القبلة والنية. نعم.
The Sheikh Hafidhahullaah began praising Allah Ta'ala and beseeching Allah to send salat and salam upon the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his family and his companions all together. And he said, as to proceed, so this is the second risala that we're going to study. And inshallah ta'ala, it is the book, The Conditions, Pillars and Requirements of Salah by Sheikh al-Islam Mohammad ibn al-Wahhab alayhi rahmatullah. Similarly, we're going to explain some of the issues that are contained inside of it, and we ask Allah ta'ala for facilitation of this matter. And so the author, he mentions the conditions of prayer are 9. Firstly, Islam. Second, sanity. Third, reaching the age of a tamyiz. Fourthly, the lack of ritual impurity. Fifthly, the removal of filth. Sixth, covering the awrah. Seventh, the entrance of the proper time. Eighth, facing the qibla. Ninth, the intention.
الصلاة في اللغة بمعنى الدعاء، كما قال عز وجل: وصل عليهم إن صلاتك سكن لهم ويدعو لهم واستغفر. وأما في الشرع فهو التعبد لله تعالى بأقوال وأفعال مخصوصة تفتتح بالتكبير وتنتهي بالتسليم. والصلاة مشروعة على كل الأمم السابقة، كما هو مذكور في قصص الأنبياء وأمرهم بالصلاة. نعم.
So the term salah in the Arabic language, it bears the meaning of dua. As Allah Ta'ala, He said, and salli alayhim, or like make dua for them. Indeed, your salah for them, it is a means of ease for them. Meaning your dua, which you make for them, it brings about ease and comfort for them. Legislatively, the term salah, it is the worship of Allah Ta'ala by way of specific actions and statements. And it is opened, or it is commenced with a takbir, it is ended with the taslim. And the salah, it was something that was legislated upon all of the previous nations before, as is mentioned in relation to the stories of the prophets, and command them, and they commanded with the salah.
فرضت الصلاة على هذه الأمة في ليلة المعراج، وهذا دلالة على أهميتها وكونها بدون واسطة. فرضت بدون واسطة 5 صلوات وفي أعلى مكان. لما عرج برسول الله إلى السماء وفرضت عليه 50 صلاة ثم جعلها 5 وهي 50 في الأجر والثواب. فيجب المحافظة على هذه الصلاة حيث ينادى بها بأوقاتها وشروطها، وترك الصلاة والتخلف عنها من صفات المنافقين ومن أسباب دخول الجحيم. ما سلككم في سقر؟ قالوا لم نكن من المصلين. وهي الفارقة بين المسلم والكافر. عهد الذي بيننا وبينهم الصلاة، فمن تركها فقد كفر. والإسلام من أعمدته الصلاة، بني الإسلام على 5 وذكر منها الصلاة. نعم.
The Sheikh, he mentions that, and so the Salah, it was made binding upon this Ummah on the night of Al-Mi'raj, on the night of the night ascension, in which the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was taken up to the heavens. And this is something which shows the importance of it, that it was made binding and obligatory upon the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and his Ummah without any intermediary. These 5 prayers made binding upon him and upon his Ummah in the highest possible place when he was taken up to the heavens. And initially 50 prayers were enjoined upon him and his Ummah, and it was reduced until it became 5. But those 5 are like 50 in terms of the reward that one will attain for them. And so it is incumbent upon the Muslim that he enacts these prayers when the call is made for them, fulfilling all of the conditions for that prayer. And it is likewise considered to be from the characteristics of the hypocrites that one is negligent and lazy and stays back away from his prayer. And it is likewise amongst the reasons that will cause entrance into the hellfire. As Allah Ta'ala, He said, what has caused you to enter a saqar, saqar being another name for the hellfire? They said, we were not amongst those who used to pray. He says, and it is likewise that distinguishing characteristic between the Muslim and the disbeliever. As the Messenger of Allah said, alayhi salam, that the covenant between us and them is the prayer. Whoever abandons it has disbelieved. And it's likewise from the foundational aspect of the religion upon which it is based and built. As the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam, he said that Islam is built upon 5, and he mentioned amongst them as-salah.
وقوله شروط الصلاة، الشرط في تعريف أهل العلم ما يلزم من عدمه العدم ولا يلزم من وجوده الوجود، بمعنى أن الشرط إذا لم يحصل بطل العمل، وإذا وجد لا يلزم على العبد أن يأتي بالعمل. ومثاله إن لم يستر العورة بطلت الصلاة، ولكن إن ستر العورة لا يلزم منه أن يصلي مباشرة بعد ستر العورة، فلا يلزم من وجوده الوجود. والفرق بينه وبين الركن أن الشرط خارج العمل والركن داخل العمل. نعم.
The shart, or the condition, has been defined by the people of knowledge as being that which, if it is absent, then that which it is the condition for is likewise absent. But if it is present, it does not necessarily mean that which it is the condition for is present. He says, so the meaning of this is that if a person does not perform one of the conditions, then the action that it is a condition for is invalid. But if you do perform one of those conditions it does not necessarily mean that you are actually engaging in the act that it is the condition for. So if a person, for example, does not cover his awrah in prayer, then his prayer is invalid. But if a person does cover his awrah, it does not necessarily mean that you're praying just simply because you covered your awrah. He says, and so this is what is intended by its presence does not necessarily necessitate the presence of the thing that it is a condition for. He says, and so this is what a condition is. And the difference between a condition and a pillar is that the pillar, it takes place inside of the prayer itself, but the condition is outside of the prayer.
ثم بدأ بتفصيل الشروط بعد أن ذكرها مجملة. الشرط الأول الإسلام. قال رحمه الله: الشرط الأول الإسلام وضده الكفر، والكافر عمله مردود ولو عمل أي عمل. والدليل قوله تعالى: ما كان للمشركين أن يعمروا مساجد الله شاهدين على أنفسهم بالكفر أولئك حبطت أعمالهم وفي النار هم خالدون. قال تعالى: وقدمنا إلى ما عملوا من عمل فجعلناه هباء منثورا. نعم.
And so after generally mentioning the conditions, he goes into detail defining each condition. And so he said the first condition is Islam, and the opposite of it is disbelief. And the actions of the disbeliever is not accepted by Allah, regardless of what good deed he may perform. And the proof for this is the statement of Allah the Exalted: it is not for the polytheists to maintain the mosque of Allah while they witness against their own selves disbelief. The work of such are in vain, and in hell they shall abide forever. Likewise, Allah Ta'ala has said, and we shall turn to whatever deeds the polytheists did, and make such deeds as scattered floating particles of dust.
شرط الإسلام وشرط عام في قبول جميع الأعمال. فالعمل لا بد فيه من الإخلاص، وهو مقتضى شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله. قل إنما أنا بشر مثلكم يوحى إلي أنما إلهكم إله واحد فمن كان يرجو لقاء ربه فليعمل عملا صالحا ولا يشرك بعبادة ربه أحدا. فالإخلاص وعدم الشرك شرط في العبادات كلها. وإذا ترك العبد الإخلاص حبط عمله ولم يقبل. وما منعهم أن تقبل منهم نفقاتهم إلا أنهم كفروا بالله وبرسوله.
And so Islam in general is a condition for the acceptance of every action that we do within our religion. So for we must have ikhlas, sincerity and purity in all of our actions. And this is what is necessitated by the testimony that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is the servant and messenger of Allah. Allah Ta'ala has said inside of his book, say, I am nothing but a human being like you. And indeed it has been revealed to me that whoever hopes for Allah in the last day, let him work righteousness and not associate anything as a partner with his Lord. He says, and so ikhlas, it is the absence of shirk or polytheism. And it is the condition for the acceptance of all of our actions that we do. So if a person were to leave off sincerity and ikhlas, then the action would be rendered invalid, and thus it will not be acceptable by Allah wa ta'ala. As Allah Ta'ala, He has said, nothing prevented their actions from being accepted except that they disbelieved in Allah and His Messenger.
فالكافر لا تنفعه حسنة في الآخرة.
The kafir is such that a good deed will not benefit him in the hereafter.
قد تنفعه في الدنيا ويجازى بها.
Perhaps it will benefit him in the dunya and he's going to receive something of reward for it.
وأما في الآخرة فكما قال تعالى والذين كفروا أعمالهم كرماد اشتدت به الريح في يوم عاصف.
As Allah Ta'ala said, as for those who have disbelieved, then their actions is like sand that the wind, it just simply blows it away.
ومن عقوبة الله للكافر أنه يحاسبه حتى على الأعمال التي لا تقبل منه.
From the punishment of Allah Ta'ala for the disbeliever is that He's going to call him to account even for action that he's not even going to accept from him anyway.
فالكافر يعاقب على تركه للصلاة وتركه للصيام وتركه للحج مع أنه إذا فعلها لم تقبل منه. وهذا ما يسميه أهل العلم أن الكفار مخاطبون بفروع الشريعة وهو قول جمهور العلماء.
So the kuffar, they are going to be called to account and made to reckon for their prayers, for the abandonment and leaving off of prayers, the abandonment and leaving off of fasting and hajj, even though if they had done them as a disbeliever, it's not going to be accepted from them anyway. And this is what the ulama have referred to as the fact that the kuffar, they are addressed with the furu and the subsidiary branches of the religion, just as the Muslims addressed with them.
فالكافر يعذب على كفره وأيضا على معاصيه. ويدل على ذلك قول الله تعالى: ما سلككم في سقر قالوا لم نك من المصلين ولم نك نطعم المسكين. وهذه معاصي. وكنا نخوض مع الخائضين وكنا نكذب بيوم الدين وهذا كفر. فدل على أنهم ذكروا أنهم عذبوا على تركهم للواجبات وفعلهم للمعاصي زيادة على كفرهم. وكقوله تعالى: خذوه فغلوه في الكافر، إلى أن قال: إنه كان لا يؤمن بالله العظيم، هذا الكفر. وأما المعاصي ولا يحض على طعام المسكين، فعوقب حتى على المعاصي على ترك الواجبات مع أنه لو فعلها لم تقبل منه.
He said, and so the disbeliever is going to be called to account for his disbelief as well as his disobedience to Allah Ta'ala. And what proves this is the statement of Allah Ta'ala in which He said, مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرٍ, what has caused you to enter as-saqar, again another name for the hellfire. They said that we were not from those who used to pray, nor did we feed the poor, nor did we encourage with the feeding of the poor. And this here, the Shaykh, he said, is the sin, this is the disobedience. All the way up to the point when he says, and we used to deny Yawm ad-Din, we used to deny the day of recompense, and this is the disbelief. He says, and so the disbeliever will be called to account for his abandonment of the obligatory aspects of the religion as well as their disbelief. He says, and so now what proves this as well is the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, wherein He said, take him and chain him up, to the point wherein He said within the verse that he used to not believe in Allah the Magnificent. And this is again the disbelief. And then He mentioned thereafter, and he did not urge with the feeding of the poor, and this is the disobedience. So therefore what we get from this is the disbeliever, in addition to the fact that he's going to be called to account and punished for his disbelief, he's going to be called to account and punished as well for his abandonment of the obligations.
الشرط الثاني العقل وضده الجنون، والمجنون مرفوع عنه القلم حتى يفيق. والدليل حديث رفع القلم عن ثلاثة: النائم حتى يستيقظ، المجنون حتى يفيق، والصغير حتى يبلغ.
Then he mentions the second condition, it is al-aql, or sanity. And the opposite of that is insanity. As for the insane person, then the pen is lifted from him until he regains his sanity. And the proof for this is the hadith, the pen is lifted from 3 people. A sleeping person until he wakes up, an insane person until he regains his sanity, and a child until he reaches the age of puberty.
نعم، وهذا الحديث رواه أبو داود والنسائي وابن ماجه، حديث صحيح. وذكر هنا شرط العقل، فالمجنون أو غير العاقل لا تجب أصلا عليه الصلاة، وهو غير مخاطب بها لأنه غير مكلف، وإن صلى لا تصح صلاته. ويدخل في غير العاقل السكران أو المغمى عليه، فإن صليا في تلك الحال كالسكران فلا تقبل صلاته، فمتى ما أفاقا وجب عليهما قضاء تلك الصلاة.
So he said that this hadith, it is reported by Abu Dawood and Nasa'i and Ibn Majah. It is a narration in Sahih. He says, and as for this condition, it being that of al-aql, the opposite of that is insanity. And for the insane person, the prayer is not obligatory upon them, nor is he addressed with its obligation. And he is not and it's because he is not responsible for it. And if he were to pray while being insane, his prayer is not correct. He says, and what enters into this meaning is the drunk person, the one who was intoxicated, or the one who was unconscious. If he were to pray in this state, meaning, for example, the drunk person, his prayer is not going to be accepted until he sobers up. But once he sobers up, then the prayer is obligatory upon him.
الثالث التمييز وضده الصغر وحده 7 سنين ثم يؤمر بالصلاة، لقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم: مروا أبناءكم بالصلاة ل7 واضربوهم عليها ل10 وفرقوا بينهم في المضاجع.
And the third condition is at tamyiz. At tamyiz, it is the age of discernment. He says its opposite is childhood, or being a small child. And the extent of it is 7 years. So meaning 7 years of age. At this point, he is commanded to pray. And the proof for this is the statement of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam: command your children to pray at the age of 7, and physically discipline them upon it at the age of 10, and separate their sleeping arrangements.
الصغير دون البلوغ هو غير مكلف، لكنه يؤمر بالصلاة وتصح الصلاة منه ويثاب عليها. فهذه شروط صحة الصلاة. فالصغير إذا صلى تقبل صلاته وتصح ويؤجر عليها، مع كونها غير واجبة عليه، لكن وليه مأمور بإلزامه بها وأمره بها، وهذا من تمام الرعاية والتربية.
The sagir, the small child that is beneath the age of puberty, is not responsible for the prayer, but he is still commanded to pray. And if he prays, his prayer is sound and he's going to be rewarded for it. And this is because it is from the conditions, tamyiz is from the conditions for the validity of his prayer. And so therefore, if the child that is of this age prays, he's going to be rewarded. And even though it's not obligatory upon him yet, but it is incumbent upon the guardian of that child to command the child to pray and to hold him responsible for it. And this is from excellence in upbringing and rearing one's children.
التمييز حده كما في الحديث 7 سنين. ويقول أهل العلم المقصود بالسبع والعشر في الحديث هو تمامها، بمعنى أنه تم 7 سنين ودخل في 8، وتم 10 سنين ودخل في التي بعدها. والتربية على الصلاة من سنن الأنبياء والصالحين. واذكر في الكتاب إسماعيل أنه كان صادق الوعد، كان رسولا نبيا، وكان يأمر أهله بالصلاة. وفي نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم قال تعالى: وأمر أهلك بالصلاة واصطبر عليها. يجب على العبد أن يصبر على أمر أولاده بالصلاة. فإن بلغوا 7 استخدم اللسان والأمر والوعد والوعيد. وإن بلغوا 10 جاز له الضرب غير المبرح، أي ضرب تعليم لا ضرب إيجاع وانتقام. والحديث رواه أبو داود وغيره، هو حديث صحيح أو حسن. نعم.
And so, at-tamyiz, the extent of it, or its demarcation, has been mentioned in this hadith, is 7 years of age. And the people of knowledge have said that what is intended by the ages 7 and 10 mentioned in this hadith is the completion of those 2 ages, meaning that he has already completed 7 years and has entered into the 8th year, or he's already completed 10 and has entered into the 11th year. Then at this point, this is when these affairs take place. And this is from the sunan and ways of the prophets and messengers. As Allah Ta'ala mentioned concerning Ismail, that Ismail, he was a messenger and a prophet, and he used to order his family with the prayer. Likewise, Allah Ta'ala, he said concerning our prophet, the Messenger of Allah Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, command your family with the prayer and be patient upon that. So Allah Ta'ala here, he commands his prophet to command his family with the salah, and then commands him to be patient upon that command, be steadfast and patient upon that command. He says, and so at this age, meaning once the child reaches this age, the age of 7, then at this point, what is utilized is the tongue, meaning you command them and you admonish them and you issue these types of exhortation and admonishments regarding the prayer. But once they reach the age of 10, at this point, they can be physically disciplined for the prayer. It is a beating that is done without injury, because the intent here is a spanking of a ta'aleem, of education, and not a spanking of vengeance and torment or punishment. And this hadith, as you mentioned, it is recorded within Abu Dawud and others, and it is sahih.
وإذا بلغ الصبي وجبت عليه الصلاة وكان من المكلفين. وعلامات البلوغ: الأول تمام 15 سنة. طبعا الأعمار 8 و10 و15 كلها بميلاده الهجري، فلا اعتبار في الإسلام للميلاد أو للتاريخ الإفرنجي أو الميلادي. الثانية نبات شعر العانة. والثالثة نزول المني يقظة أو مناما. وتزيد البنت بأنها تحيض، إن حاضت فقد بلغت. فهذه علامات البلوغ الأربع.
And so, if the child reaches the age of puberty, then at that point the prayer is obligatory upon them. And it is obligatory upon them, and they are considered to be from those who are responsible from the prayer. And the signs of puberty are as follows. Firstly, the age of 15 years old. Once the child reaches the age of 15, then they are considered to be in a state of puberty. And this 15 years of age, it is by way of the Hijri calendar. As within Islam, there is no import whatsoever to the Gregorian or the Frank or the French calendars. The second sign of puberty is hair in the ana, or hair that grows around the private area. The third sign of puberty is when the boy's body is able to produce sperm, either nocturnally, meaning in a sleep or a wet dream, or while he's awake. If his body can produce sperm at this point, he is considered to be mature. And as it relates to the girl, another sign has been added, and that is once she begins to menstruate. Once she begins to menstruate, she is considered to be of the age of maturity. And these are the four signs of bulugh or puberty.
فأي علامة من هذه العلامات كان أول حصل البلوغ وأصبح من المكلفين؟ وحينما نقول إن الصلاة من الطفل المميز صحيحة، ينبني على ذلك مسألة، وهو إذا بلغ الصبي أثناء وقت الصلاة وقد صلاها. فمثلا صلى صلاة العصر ثم نام نصف ساعة فاستيقظ فوجد أنه قد احتلم، هنا دخل في التكليف. هل يلزمه إعادة الصلاة التي لا زال وقتها أم لا؟ الصحيح أن الصلاة الأولى معتبرة وصحيحة ولا تلزمه الإعادة وليس عليه القضاء، لأن الصلاة الأولى صحت منه فلا نلزمه بإعادتها.
And so, whichever one of these signs appears, then at that point, the child is considered to be in the stage of puberty, and thus they are responsible. And so when we mention the affair of the fact that the child who has reached the age of at-tamyiz, the prayer is correct and sound from him, although it's not obligatory, this brings about an issue. And the issue is, if the child is of the age of tamyiz, he has not yet reached puberty, but he's of the age of tamyiz, and he prays a prayer while being in a state of tamyiz, then while that prayer is still in, he enters into the state of puberty while that prayer is still in, then is the prayer that he made correct, thus he does not have to repeat it, or not? He says, meaning by way of example, the child of the age of tamyiz prays Salat al-Asr, and then he lays down and takes a nap for a half hour. And while he takes a nap, he wakes up and realizes that he had a wet dream. So the initial prayer that he made, is it considered to be sound and correct? Thus he does not have to repeat it. The Shaykh says no, he does not have to repeat the prayer, because when he made that prayer was considered to be sound. Thus, the prayer is sound. He does not have to go back and pray it over.
الشرط الرابع رفع الحدث وهو الوضوء المعروف وموجبه الحدث. نعم.
The fourth condition is the removal of al-hadath, or ritual impurity. And it's referred to the well-known wudu. And what makes this wudu obligatory is the enactment of a hadath, something that breaks the wudu.
رفع الحدث معناه زواله، إزالة الحدث.
The meaning of the lifting of al-hadath is the removal of it. The zawal, meaning that the hadath actually ceases to exist.
ويكون هذا بالطهارة. فإذا من شروط الصلاة الطهارة هي رفع الحدث، لقوله عليه الصلاة والسلام: لا يقبل الله صلاة بغير طهور. حديث متفق عليه. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام مفتاح الصلاة طهور.
And as it relates to the affair of what is intended by the removal of it is at-tahara, as at-tahara or purification it is from the conditions of prayer. What indicates this is the statement of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he said that Allah will not accept the prayer of one who has nullified his wudu except with tuhur, except with purity. And this hadith is agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim. He likewise said, alayhi salatu wasalam, the key to prayer is at-tahara, is purification.
والحدث يشمل ثلاثة أشياء. الحدث الأكبر وإزالته بالغسل كالجنابة والحيض والنفاس. الثاني الحدث الأصغر وإزالته بالوضوء كنواقض الوضوء، أو إزالة الحدث الأكبر أو الأصغر بالتيمم إذا عدم الماء أو تعذر استعماله، للاثنين الأكبر والأصغر. والحدث الثالث وهو النجاسة. لذلك يزيد بعض أهل العلم قولهم رفع الحدث وزوال النجس، فإزالة النجاسة من البدن ومن الملبس، وهذه سيأتي الكلام عنها.
So the Shaykh, he mentions, Hafidhahullaah, that al-hadath, what enters into this is three matters. The first is that which is considered to be major hadath, and what removes that is ghusl, such as, for example, one being in a state of sexual impurity, or one having a woman receiving her menstrual cycle, or a woman suffering from postnatal bleeding. And then there is the minor hadath, and what removes that is wudu, and this is any of the nullifiers of wudu. Or you can remove both of them, meaning both the major and the minor, by way of tayammum in the absence of water. One performs tayammum if he has no water. And the third type of hadath is what's called an-najasa, and it's something which is considered to be filthy or impure itself. And for this reason, some of the people of knowledge, they have said the removal of hadath and the ceasing of an-najas. And this is that one removes that which is impure from their body and from their clothing. And speech regarding this issue shall come in its proper place, inshallah ta'ala.
قال وشروطه 10. وشروطه هنا أي الوضوء ورفع الحدث، فهذه 10 شروط: إسلام والعقل، تمييز والنية، واستصحاب حكمها بألا ينوي قطعها حتى تتم الطهارة، وانقطاع موجب، واستنجاء أو استجمار قبله، وطهورية ماء وإباحته، وإزالة ما يمنع وصول الماء إلى البشرة، ودخول وقت على من حدثه دائم لفرضه. عندكم ترجمة؟
And so the Shaykh, he mentions that and the conditions of this wudu is 10. What he intends the conditions of the wudu, those things, the wudu which is the removal of hadath or the lifting of al-hadath. There are 10 conditions, and the first of them is al-Islam. The second, sanity. The third, the age of maturity. The fourth is the intention. Fifth is accompanying its ruling by the fact that one must intend not to stop it until he completes his wudu. Sixth, the removal of what makes the ritual impurity mandatory. Seventh, the cleansing of the private parts by way of istinja or istijmar. The eighth, clean water, that is permissible to use. Ninth, removing all things that prevent the water from reaching the skin. 10, it must be the proper time for it. And this is applicable to those who have a constant state of ritual impurity due to its obligation.
أما الإسلام والعقل والتمييز فمر الكلام عنها في شروط الصلاة. نعم.
As for Islam, aql and at-tamyiz, then speech regarding these three have already passed. We were speaking about the condition of prayer.
أما النية فهي شرط لجميع الأعمال من طهارة وغيرها. قوله عليه الصلاة والسلام إنما الأعمال بالنيات والنية محلها القلب. والنية يميز بها العبد بين العبادات والعادات وبين العبادات نفسها. بين العبادات والعادات كمن اغتسل غسل الجمعة وهو عبادة، أو اغتسل غسل نظافة وهو عادة، فالذي ميز بينهما النية. وكمن صلى الظهر والعصر جمعا وقصرا فالفعل واحد، ولكن الذي ميز هذه ظهر وهذه عصر هو النية. والمطلوب من العبد هنا أن ينوي رفع الحدث أو الطهارة لما يجب أو الطهارة لما يستحب، يعني ما هو مقدم عليه من العبادة. نعم.
As for the affair of an-niyyah, then it is a condition for the validity and acceptance of all acts of worship that we do, whether it is purity or other than it. As the Messenger of Allah said, alayhi salatu wasalam, indeed actions are but by way of the intention. And the place of the intention is the heart. And it is that which distinguishes acts of worship from mere habits and customs. It likewise distinguishes acts of worship one from the other. So for example, a person, he performs ghusl for Jumu'ah. This is an act of ibadah. Or a person may perform ghusl simply because he wants to practice good hygiene. He's just trying to bathe himself. This is an ibadah. This is a habit or just a custom. Or a person, for example, and this is in connection to acts of worship being distinguished from each other, a person prays dhuhr and asr, combining and shortening them both. The actions are going to resemble each other and look exactly the same. But he distinguishes between them by way of what? His intention. He says, and what is intended here by the intention is that he intends by way of his purification, by way of his wudu, to lift and remove the hadith from himself.
وقوله واستصحاب حكمها بأن لا ينوي قطعها حتى تتم الطهارة، هذا مداره على القلب. والمعنى ألا ينوي قطعها خلال أدائها، خلال الأداء، أداء العبادة. فلا ينوي في وسط الوضوء قطع عبادته وقطع وضوئه وينقله إلى عادة. وأما قطعها بعد العبادة فلا يضر. فمن توضأ ثم نوى بعد انتهاء الوضوء أن وضوءه باطل أو قطع وضوءه فهذا لا يضره، يبقى على طهارة. ومثله الشك بعد العبادة لا يضر. فإذا شك بعد انتهاء العبادة هل صلى 3 أو 4 وهو شاك غير جازم، فالشك بعد العبادة لا يضر، وهذا فيه قطع لباب الوسواس. نعم.
As for what is mentioned concerning accompanying its ruling by the fact that one must intend to not stop it until he completes his ritual impurity, then this likewise is connected to one's heart. So it means that one does not intend to discontinue his wudu while he's doing the wudu. So one does not intend, for example, in the middle of his wudu, that he's going to cut his wudu at this point and turn it to just a habit that he's doing. He's no longer intending the ritual impurity, just intending a habit. As for if a person completes his wudu, and after the wudu is already over and been completed, then it will not harm him if his intention changes after the fact. His wudu remains. His wudu remains. He says, so if, for example, the person, he makes his wudu, completes the wudu, and after he finishes it, he feels like his wudu is invalid. Or that, you know what, I'm going to change my intention for the wudu that I made earlier. Then this person's wudu remains. This does not affect his wudu at all. It is similar to doubt after an act of worship has already been completed. So if a person completes an act of worship, for example, and then doubt comes to him after the act of worship is done and over with, he doubts as to whether he prayed 3 or 4 rak'at, then this doubt, it does not harm the validity of his prayer. It does not harm the validity of his prayer after the act of worship has already been completed. And this is from the perspective of doubt not removing that which is already certain.
وقوله انقطاع موجب أي الحدث، ومعناه أنه ينتظر حتى ينتهي هذا الحدث ثم يبدأ بالوضوء أو بالغسل، فلا يبدأ بالوضوء وهو لم ينتهي من قضاء حاجته، هذا انقطاع الموجب. أو المرأة لا يجوز لها أن تغتسل وهي لا زالت على لم ينقطع حيضها، فلا يشرع في الوضوء أو الغسل قبل انقطاع الحدث. نعم.
As for the removal of what makes ritual purity mandatory, then what is intended by that is that the hadith itself, one must wait until the hadith has actually ended and then commence their wudu or their ghusl. So one does not start their wudu or their ghusl while the actual impurity is actually still going on. So for example, one does not commence their wudu, one does not start their wudu until them answering the call of nature has stopped and ceased completely. Similarly, the woman, she does not start performing her ghusl while the blood from her menstrual cycle is still flowing, but rather one must wait until the actual hadith itself stops completely and then they begin their purification.
وقوله استنجاء أو استجمار قبله، الاستنجاء بالماء والاستجمار بالحجارة، ويكفي أحدهما عن الآخر ولا يلزم الجمع بينهما كما يقوله بعض الفقهاء، والماء أكمل. وأما الاستجمار لا بد أن يكون ب3 أحجار ونحوها، ويقوم مقامه الجمادات الطاهرة كالخرق والمناديل وغيرها، ولا يجوز أن يستنجي بعظم وروث. والاستنجاء أو الاستجمار هو شرط لرفع الحدث وليس للوضوء، بمعنى أنه ليس من اللازم أن يذهب إلى الخلاء أو الحمام إذا أراد أن يتوضأ، وإنما إذا ذهب إلى الخلاء يلزمه الاستجمار أو الاستنجاء.
So what is intended by the performance of istinja or istijmar? He says that then istinja is the utilization of water to clean one's private parts. Istijmar is the utilization of stones to remove the filth from one's body. And either of the two is sufficient. And it is not a must that one combine them and do both, as some of the fuqaha have stated. He says, but water, istinja with water, is more complete. He says, and as it relates to istijmar, then the minimum requirement is 3. that one utilize 3 stones or whatever stands in the place of stones. So one can utilize paper, one can utilize a cloth, one can utilize toilet paper and the likes of that. And it is not permissible that one utilize dung or bones to clean themselves with. He says, and what is meant by it is a condition, is that it is the condition for raf al-hadath, that it is a condition for the removal of hadith from oneself. It is not a condition for the wudu itself. Meaning that if one uses the bathroom and he performs istinja in the bathroom, and it comes time for him to make wudu, he doesn't have to go back to the bathroom and make istinja just to start his wudu. Right? Rather, when he used the bathroom initially, he made istinja then, and that is sufficient for him.
وطهورية ماء وإباحته.
And the
نعم هذا قال وطهورية ماء وإباحته. أما الطهورية فمعناه أنه يشترط في الماء الذي يستخدمه للطهارة أن يكون طاهرا، وهو ما لم يتغير لونه أو طعمه أو رائحته بنجس. وأما إن تغير بطاهر فيجوز الوضوء به بشرط أن لا ينتقل عن اسم الماء، أن لا ينتقل من كونه ماء إلى عصير أو إلى خل أو إلى أي شيء آخر أو إلى ماء ورد، ما دام أنه اسمه ماء وخالطه طاهر يجوز استعماله ولو تغير أحد أوصافه. وأما بالنجاسة فإن تغير أحد أوصافه الثلاث فلا يجوز استخدامه في الطهارة.
As for the condition that it has to be with clean water that is permissible to use, then the purity of the water means that the water itself is pure and it has not been changed or altered in terms of its color, its taste, or its smell by way of something that is impure. As for if something pure were to mix with the water, then as long as it can still be called water, it is permissible to use. But if something pure mixes with it and you can no longer call it water, for example, it becomes juice now, or it becomes gravy, or it becomes rose water, or something like this, then it is no longer permissible to use for wudu. He says, and as for if something impure were to mix with it, something najis were to mix with that water, then if one of its 3 characteristics, its color, taste, or smell, were to change, then at that point it is not permissible to use it for purification.
قال وحله بمعنى أن يكون الماء جائز اقتناؤه. والصحيح في هذه المسألة أن الماء إذا كان حراما كالماء المسروق أو المغصوب أن الوضوء به صحيح مع الإثم، لأنهما جهتان مختلفتان، فسرقته للماء عليه إثم السرقة، ولكن إن توضأ به صح وضوءه.
As for its permissibility, the permissibility of the water, it means that the water itself has to be pure, 100%. One knows that the water is pure. He says, as for water that is haram, for example, meaning that the water, it is stolen, or someone took the water from someone else by force, they robbed them for the water, and then they were to perform wudu with the stolen or robbed water, then what is correct is that the wudu is sound, but it brings along with it a sin. He said, and so if, for example, you stole water from somebody and you perform wudu with that water, then now you have 2 aspects to that water. You have the fact that the water, it is stolen water, and one gets a sin for stealing the water, But as for the wudu itself that is performed with that water, then the wudu, it is correct.
وقوله إزالة ما يمنع وصول الماء إلى البشرة، أي أنه يجب إزالة كل شيء له جرم وثقل يمنع وصول الماء إلى البشرة، مثل الصبغ أو الأصباغ أو الطين أو العجين، أو مثل صبغ الأظافر للنساء. فكل ما يمنع وصول الماء إلى البشرة يجب. وأما ما كان لونا فقط فلا يمنع أو لا يجعل الوضوء غير صحيح، مثل الحناء أو الوشم مثلا، مع أنه حرام يجب إزالته، لكن إن توضأ وضوءه صحيح لأنه لا يمنع وصول الماء إلى البشرة.
As for the condition, the removal of all things that will block and hinder the water from reaching the level of the skin. He says, for example, one may have some type of paint or gel or some type of clay or some nail polish that the women wear and the likes of that. One must remove all of these things before performing the wudu. As for that which is only a color, it's only coloring itself, but it does not prevent the water from reaching the skin, then the wudu is sound with these things. For example, henna or a tattoo, even though the tattoos are haram and one must remove them if he has them, wudu while having tattoos, they don't prevent the water from reaching the skin. So one must remove anything that would hinder the water from reaching the skin in order for his wudu to be sound.
أذن. وقوله دخول وقت على من حدثه دائم لوقته، هذا معناه أن من كان حدثه دائم لا يستمر، دائم مستمر لا ينقطع، مثل من ابتلي بسلس البول مستمر خروج البول، أو سلس الريح، أو المرأة المستحاضة، فهذا ينتظر دخول وقت الصلاة ويتوضأ، ولا يتوضأ قبل دخول وقت الصلاة، فكل صلاة يتوضأ لها وضوءا جديدا ولا يضره ما حصل بعد ذلك، كما في حديث فاطمة بنت أبي حبيش وأم حبيبة رضي الله تعالى عنها.
As for the condition that it must be the proper time for it, and this is applicable to the one who has a constant state of ritual impurity due to its obligation, then this is meaning the one who is always in a state of ritual impurity due to, for example, in the ritual impurity, it does not cut, it does not cease. So for example, one who is tried with incessant leakage of urine or incessant leakage or incessant exit of wind, or the woman who suffers from istihaba, then what this person must do is when the time of the prayer enters, then they make a new wudu for every prayer, and they cannot rely upon the previous wudu which they made for the previous prayer. Rather, every time a new prayer comes in, they make wudu anew, and then they begin from there, as has come in the hadith of Fatima bint Abi Hubaysh and that of Habiba.
والله أعلم، صلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد. نتوقف إلى الغد إن شاء الله، وبعد صلاة العشاء هناك محاضرة لأخينا الشيخ الدكتور خالد الشمري جزاه الله خيرا بعد الصلاة مباشرة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله